don't know what I did with that. All right. All right, good morning. This is Sports for Real with Coach Hall on a off location, as I should say. A little bit different this week. Spring break, so I had to get up and move in the morning for a week if I don't want to. But of course, I can't sit still. Too much going on for me to sit still. But as you know, the NCAA tournament released its brackets yesterday. And all during the weekend where the conference tournaments was going on, all they were talking about was how Auburn was a lock at the number one overall seed. Well, I talked about this a couple weeks ago. Auburn dominant all year long. They ended up with 16 quad one wins, and quad ones are teams in the top 1 through 30. They had 16 of them. So they were cruising along 2 weeks before the season was over with. Then they ran into Texas A&M. Texas A&M knocked them off. And being that Auburn had won games at different styles, you can clearly have a compelling reason why this is the best team in the country, because they can adapt to any style of play that somebody throws at them. They were winning like that. But just like you have a neighborhood bully, he's knocking everybody out, then all of a sudden somebody stands up to him and knock him out. Well, Auburn was that bully, and Texas A&M vanquished them. Then about a week later, the last game of the regular season, Auburn loses to their rival, Alabama. So it's not one loss, now you got two. So you go to the SEC tournament, and they end up winning, I believe, one game. And then in the semifinal round, they get knocked off again, this time by Tennessee. So now that's 3 losses over the last 5 or 6 games for this team that's supposed to be invincible. So what the NCAA did, they put them still as the number one overall seed based on the body of work that they've done the whole season. Well, that's in stark contrast to what the football committee does. They don't do it that way, or haven't done it that way the last couple of years. Whatever that means. Hello, JC, how you doing, man? Talking about these Auburn Tigers and this number one overall seed. So, in comparison to the way the football committee does it, you know, when Florida State lost their quarterback, Jordan Travis, 2 years ago, the team, it weren't the same without Travis. So I can justify them looking at a football team and saying how one player can transfer or diminish the performance of the whole team. And we have seen that, and hell, Florida State hasn't recovered since. But basketball is a little different. You can lose one player and it can change the dynamics of your team, but that's not the case with Auburn. Auburn hasn't lost anybody. It's just that these teams now They don't see Auburn anymore. They can't just show up. I don't know what you're talking about. You better get blocked. Auburn just not the same threat to teams now as they were a couple weeks ago. And because of that, I got a problem with them being ranked as the number one overall seed. Now, the good thing about it is not like college football used to be where they pick two teams to go play for a championship. You got to go through the brackets. So really, it doesn't matter to me what seed you are. If you're in the top 3 or 4, you're going to have to play wherever you go. I was previously picking Auburn to win it all. Now I'm switching to Duke. I'm going to get to Duke in a second. Auburn, to me, they're still going to have to earn their keep, and I think they're going to be okay because they were struggling up to the point of the last 5 minutes against Tennessee, and they made a ferocious comeback and almost pulled that game out. So I think they're going to be fine. If they play that way, then Auburn's going to be okay. Now, the other teams that are playing well, JC mentioned Duke. I told you, a week or so ago that I thought Cooper Flagg and Duke was, to me, the best team in the country. They were certainly playing the best ball in the country. And I said, barring a catastrophic accident or something along those lines, Duke was going to be playing in the championship game. Well, something catastrophic did happen to Duke. That guy, Cooper Flagg, he did just like Jalen Brunson of the Knicks, jumped up, landed down on a player, and turned his ankle severely. Well, Brunson hasn't been back, but I'm hearing that Flagg is going to be available at some point during the tournament. I think that the way that the NCAA does their tournament, being that Duke is the number one seed, they won't face any real threat until the Sweet 16 round. And I think that's where you're going to see the return of Cooper Flagg. But I saw the way that Duke played against Louisville, and it almost plays to their favor they didn't have Flagg, because now players is going to have to stepped up, and came back and brought them back to pull away from Louisville to win the ACC championship game. Now, the other team, Florida Gators, they might be playing the best of all right now. They put the Gators as the number one seed out in the West, I believe it is. Yeah, they sent Florida out to the West. Houston took the Midwest. Duke is in the East. And Auburn took the number one seed in the South. So it's going to be some interesting basketball. But the way that the tournament, again, is set up is not conducive to great games unless you get upsets in that first round or two. And it's always, those 5-12 games is always very interesting. But most of the time, those higher seeds, they're going to win those games. Now, there's some controversial interest into the tournament, as there are every year. North Carolina, they only have one quad one win. North Carolina had several quad two wins, which are middle tier wins, and they didn't beat anybody of repute on a higher level. But for whatever reason, them with their one win in the quad four, they still got into the tournament. Well, as you dig a little deeper, the guy, Bubba Cunningham, is tied up to the University of North Carolina. And even though he couldn't be in the discussion with North Carolina was being talked about to be in the tournament, you can't tell me that it didn't have some kind of influence on them getting into the tournament. So lo and behold, North Carolina gets into the tournament over, say, a Boise State. And you also got 14 teams from the SEC. That's almost the whole damn conference. When you look at 14 teams, you can't tell me all 14 of those teams are worthy of being in the tournament, and some other teams are being left out. Big Ten only got 8 teams. Indiana got left out. Oklahoma got in also. Now, when I look at that, I see Texas and Oklahoma still as Big 12 teams, so I'm not overly blown away by that. But SEC with 18 teams and 14 of them got in. You can't tell me all 14 of those teams are worthy enough to be in the tournament. You got some pretenders in there, and this tournament is going to shake that out. But based on the number of teams that they got, odds should tell you that at least 2 of them should make it through to the Final Four. And I'm not sure, Ohio State got left out. I'm not sure if it's a good idea to put so many teams in one conference. But just like in college football, you get all these teams and they don't show up, and they just say the SEC only have one team make it to the Sweet 16. How's that going to make the committee look? It's not going to make them look very good. When you put North Carolina, I think North Carolina got in because the ACC doesn't have that many teams. It was actually kind of weak conference this year, but that still doesn't mean that the team at the top, Duke, cannot dethrone anybody else out there. And being a number one seed, you're probably not going to run into any top tier contenders until you get to the Elite Eight round. So it becomes a 3-game tournament in essence. But I don't think that North Carolina and some of these other teams, Texas and Oklahoma, should have gotten the tournament. But when you look at it, what they do, they look at name brands. North Carolina is a name brand. And North Carolina is going to get the nod over Boise State all the time. It's the same thing with football. So instead of beating around the bush and talking about who's on the bubble and who's not, when you know doggone well that these name brand schools are going to get the nod over the smaller tier schools, they're going to call out strength of schedule when North Carolina didn't have it, and when they had it, they couldn't do anything with it. So what good is to have a tough schedule if you can't win? They're going to have to go through the play-in game, which San Diego State is a tough game. But I think that North Carolina is probably going to squeak through, and the tournament committee is going to say, see, they deserve to be in the tournament. But most people would say otherwise. Now, speaking of the bubble teams, the discussion was North Carolina, Texas, should they be in the tournament? Well, like I've been telling you before, the NCAA tournament is a great tournament, except the way they do the seedings. And it goes back to the same point I just made about taking name brand schools and putting them in the tournament over small schools. They have, 38 automatic bids, and the other 30 are at large. But most of the at large bids goes to the big schools. So while they just stop beating around the bush and say, look, this is a tournament for big schools only. And if you're not a big tier school, then we don't want you here. That's basically the only thing left for them to say, because it's obvious what they're doing. What do I mean by that? North Carolina shouldn't be in the tournament. If North Carolina was to get in the tournament and they were that low, then North Carolina should be a 16 or 15 seed. But they're not a 16 seed. They're an 11 seed. So how can you be on the bubble and end up with an 11 seed? That doesn't make sense to me. So if the tournament really wants to have a legitimate tournament, then these teams like North Carolina at 11 should be on the 16 line. It's the only thing that makes sense. And if you did that, you're going to have a better tournament. You're going to have more 16 seeds beating ones and 15s over twos and so on, because they will be properly seeded. But to say this team is on the bubble and shouldn't be in the tournament, and then when they get in the tournament, they're 11 seed, come on, man, give me a break. Why don't you just take these smaller schools that you don't want in the tournament, get rid of them, and then you can have, go back to the 48 model that you had for years before they went to 64. Then maybe less complaining, and then the mid-majors can have their own tournament, and then you can go from there. But that's just the way I see it. It'll never go that way, because the way it's going, and being that it is a good tournament, most people are still going to watch, even though they missed the obvious. But in North Carolina, if they're truly a bubble team, then they should be on the 16 line instead of number 11. All right. The other thing I want to talk about was the role of the point guard. I've been fooling around with these parlays trying to catch them. I'm not a gambler, it's just something I'm trying out. And I've noticed certain things about these stat lines. I had one the other night where it came down to Jokic from Denver. You know, he's averaging a triple-double for the whole year. And I had him down for 10 assists. He's averaging that. He didn't do much for the whole game, but when the game was on the line, the man started scoring points and distributing like he's been doing all year. They scored a bucket with 5 seconds left, and Washington called a timeout. Had it gone to overtime, it would have been clear that he got that extra assist that he needed for me to actually win something. Well, Washington hit a three-pointer at the buzzer to keep it from overtime, and that knocked me off that. But when I look at the point guards for Denver, they don't seem to be getting very many assists. Chris Paul, he averaged about 6 a game. He's a point guard. And then I'm watching Lillard from Milwaukee last night. He's supposed to get 8, 9 assists a game. He's deep into the third quarter with about a minute left before he got his first assist. Now, how can a point guard in the NBA have 0 assists with 1 minute left in the third quarter? That doesn't make sense for traditional basketball. Why is it that these point guards cannot get assists anymore? Well, as I look at the way that they're playing, what the point guards are doing, they're throwing the ball down to the big fella. And the big fellas, instead of just going straight up with it, they're catching it and they passing to cutters and they're getting slashing layups, or they turn around and hit the shot themselves, or they turn around, they kick it out to a slasher, he can't get there, he kicks it out for a three-pointer, and there you go. Point guard, he's just the person that initiates the action. But in times past, he's going to distribute the ball to the open person. Now, in Lillard's defense, he was trying to pass the ball to his teammates, but every time he passed the ball to a teammate for a wide open shot, they would miss. So it wasn't entirely his fault that he didn't have any assists last night. But Milwaukee is essentially, to me, is a two-headed team. If Giannis don't go off and get 13, 14 rebounds and 30 points, and if Lillard's not hitting a whole bunch of three-pointers, then Milwaukee has a problem. And that's the problem they had last night when they played OKC. OKC, on the other hand, they're consistent. You got Gilgeous-Alexander. He got his 30 points. He's distributing the ball. Now, he don't get very many assists either, but it's basically the same thing I just described to you that's happening to Lillard. He'll pass the ball, then the person he passes to somebody else, and they'll hit the shot. So all the assists, like Jokic, are coming through the big fella. Now, OKC, their problem is, can they gel enough and have enough experience to get through the playoffs? Last year, they didn't really have any experience, but now they got a little bit more experience. And I saw something last night that will make OKC an even greater threat. That guy Hartenstein, he was playing his behind off last night. He had about 15 points. He had over 10 rebounds, and he had several assists. In much the way that Jokic is catching the ball and distributing, he's doing the same thing. And if Hartenstein plays like that, OKC is going to be very hard to beat, because if he's distributing and you don't need your point guard to distribute, and your point guard is scoring 30-plus points, how are you going to beat this team? So I just thought it was strange that point guards nowadays, they don't get very many assists. And that's just the way that the game is flipped all the way around. Even they sitting there trying to dribble the ball up the floor and jack up threes, and that's just the nature of the game now. So I don't know if that's going to change, because the way they're shooting them in the NBA now, I don't see that trend changing. It's exciting if you like to see that, but team basketball, not so much. But I just thought it was strange that old Lillard, he can't get any assists. But he was trying. It's just that the players that shot the ball that he threw too wide open, not one of them hit a shot. And now on the flip side of that, he can come back the next game, make the same passes, and those guys actually hit the shots this time. But I just don't see Milwaukee as being a threat, because really they're a two-headed monster. Lopez might step up every now and then, but for the most part, you forget all about Milwaukee trying to go deep into the playoffs. This is an OKC year, and if they can manage to get by, probably the biggest threat is Minnesota and Denver. And one of those teams, they're going to have to go against the Lakers, and one of those teams is going to beat each other. So OKC, they might have a smooth route to the playoffs, depending on how the seedings go throughout the rest of the tournament. But Golden State, they're playing better ball. Everybody talking about how much better they are, how much of a threat they are with Jimmy Butler. But I'm telling you, stat-wise, Jimmy Butler is not putting up any great stats. If you expect Curry to go out there and hit 7, 8 three-pointers in the playoffs every night, and score 40 plus points. That's not going to happen. And I think that's what Golden State is looking forward to. And they won, 14 games since Butler's been there? They playing better team ball. But at the same time, they're going to need Butler to step up and do more scoring than what he's doing. And same thing with Jamal Murray. Guy in the comment tell me I should back up off Jamal Murray. But Murray, he's supposed to be the number 2 scorer behind Jokic, but he's only getting 2 or 3 points in the first half. He's dependent on a furious rally in the second half to get his stat lined up. I mean, kid needs at least, you got to come up with at least 10 points and a half to take the pressure off Jokic, man. JC says, OKC and Cleveland are new threats in the NBA. Yeah, I think Cleveland, the problem with them, they lost yesterday against Orlando, but they didn't play Mobley. And Mitchell just coming back off injuries, played pretty well. I think Cleveland is a threat to Boston. But I think that Boston, if Derek White keeps playing the way he's playing, it's going to be hard for Cleveland to get by Boston. I think if Cleveland is going to beat Boston, it's going to take 7 games. And for you to beat Oklahoma City, you're going to have to cut Gilgeous' scoring down to about 20 and make the other guys beat you. But like I said, if Hartenstein is playing the way he played last night, then they're going to be an extremely tough out. So it's going to come down to who has the biggest heart in these playoffs. But Tatum, he's going to get his points. Jaylen Brown is a wild card to me with Boston because he's not consistent. I've seen him play and he get 25 and he's all over the place. But then there's time he might get 12 or 13 points. I mean, he's got to be more consistent than what he's been if they want to repeat as champion. And there's more threats this year. And I think Jokic, his biggest problem is the sidekicks. Murray, he's going to have to step his game up, or Denver, they're not going to get very far. And that's illustrated by the way Minnesota defends Denver. They slow Murray down and pretty much cut his head off. And OKC's got the defense to do the same thing. So I think it's going to come down to OKC, Boston, Cleveland, and whoever makes it to that the Western Championship to match up against OKC. That's what I think is going to happen with the NBA. But going back to Lillard, though, I think the point guard position is pretty much redefined now. I mean, he's not really looked on to distribute. He's just another guard to jack up 3-pointers. And when he makes his throw down to the big fella is now the one that's doing all of the distributing. I'm seeing it all the time now with the big fella, Jokic. And then you have Hartenstein last night, and you have other big fellows like Al Horford who could do the same thing. Mobley, like I say, is a very vital component for Cleveland, and he can do the same thing. So if you got a guy that can swing that ball around and hit the shot when you have to and take it to the hole, oh, you got something to deal with. And that's what those swing players like Mobley, that's what they're doing. But the point guard themselves, if you're expecting them to do a whole lot of assisting or get a whole lot of assists, that's not the way it's played now. You can still see it in high school and college, but the NBA, you can forget it, man. So I don't know. But just to wrap up, I don't think Auburn should be the number 1 overall seed, but at the same time, they can redeem themselves, and it doesn't matter really where you are. It just depends on what matchups you get. But no matter what your seeding is at this point, you're going to have to play. Duke with Cooper Flag, to me, is going to be a hard out. I think Duke beat Florida. I just think Duke will beat Florida, and all the experts now are picking the Gators to win it all, despite Auburn's lofty ranking. Not one of the experts I've seen had Auburn making it to the championship game or to the final. Well, they made it to the Elite Eight, but not into the Final Four. And if they played the way that they played in the second, with the last 5 minutes against Tennessee, then that team there is going to do pretty well. But if they stutter and stumble the way they did for the balance of the game, then Auburn's not going to get very far. Now, granted, Tennessee is a pretty good defensive team, but they just can't they don't have enough offense to go as deep as they think they can go. And I also don't have much confidence that Rick Barnes can be the one to take them there. Yeah, he can put together a good team, but I've seen him do some questionable things in the NCAA tournaments. So as far as I'm concerned, Tennessee's got a lot going against them. Auburn, they can still come back. The advantage of being the number one overall seed, you don't get that higher tier 2 seed in your bracket. You're probably going to get the lower tier number 2 seed. And that kind of works to your favor. But Auburn, they've beaten them all, and they've beaten them all in different styles. But I question the strength of play across the NCAA. But one guy like Cooper Flagg, he can take them all the way through. But he's got to get well, and I think he will get well. And even though people don't talk about it, they still have these agents that, well, when you're having troubles with pains, they got something they can shoot you up with to hide that pain. You pay for it afterward, but they got something for all of that. Nobody talks about that anymore, but doctors still have the capability to fix a player up when they have to. And I think with all the money that's on the line, I think you're going to see Cooper Flagg come through in the second weekend. I don't think he's going to play the first weekend, but in that second Sweet 16 game, not the Sweet 16, but the second round of 32, if they get into a jam, then he can come off the bench and help them there. But I don't think they're going to need him the first weekend. But when they come back in the Sweet 16 round, that's when you're going to see Flagg. And if he's anywhere close to his old self with the way the rest of the guys are playing, I expect Duke to go deep in this tournament, probably make it all the way to the championship. But they're probably going to run into Florida at some point. And that'll be an interesting matchup. But Auburn at the number 1 seed, I don't think they're going to make it. But who knows? They've been there before. They have an opportunity to do it again. And a lot of people are looking at them sideways. They're looking at the SEC sideways because they got so many teams in the tournament. It's a record this year. I'm saying this is the deepest conference play they've ever had, and that's saying a whole lot. Because there's been a lot of great conference play over the years, especially out of that Big East. When I was coming up through school in the 80s, there were some tough teams coming out of that Northeast, man. So it'll be interesting to see how the SEC performs in this NCAA tournament. But I don't think Auburn's going to be there in the end. The Gators, the way they're playing, they got confidence. They're going to go deep in the tournament. But while we're talking about all these big teams, there's some smaller schools out there. They're just waiting to get their shot. And you're going to see that in the first round. I don't count that play-in round where the number 11 seeds and they play and come back on Friday to play in the first round. I don't count that. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the first round starts on Thursday. But like I said, you should stop pretending and get rid of the small programs and have them play in their own tournament instead of having them be cast aside like they are now. To say that North Carolina is on a bubble and they shouldn't be in the tournament, and then when you put them in the tournament, they're number 11 seed. You basically telling me that they're better than 20 other teams, and the math doesn't add up. So if I'm wrong, you tell me. But anyway, point guard role is changing, like I said, and there's a lot of action to be taking place. Don't have much NFL talk today. I want to talk a little bit about basketball, which is a miracle because, like I said, basketball is just something to do until football comes around. But at least you got to give them their time to enjoy the spotlight, if you will. But football will always be king, coming from my vantage point. So wherever you are in the world, appreciate you listening to the old coach this morning. Even though we're on spring break and got a little baseball action today, we're going to break through, man. Getting better. I wish I can get about 3 or 4 pitches for Christmas this year. And then if I did that, then we'll be okay. But the improvement is coming slowly, and it's a steady grind. But, if you don't have a pitcher, I don't care what level you're on, you can't play. You're walking around, and You got to have a pitcher, man. If you don't have pitching, you can't win in baseball. And then once you get a good pitcher, you got to play good defense behind them. So at least as our pitchers get better, the defense slowly gets better. So by the time we get a pitcher or two, hopefully three, and the defense improves, I think next year is going to be our time, but not right now. I'm better than I was last year, but if you look at it on paper, you can't tell it. Next year is going to be our year. I should have me 3 or 4 different pitchers. I did check the poll, JC. Most people said that they don't want to do a poll, but only got like 3 votes on it, so which is fine. But what I was going to propose, I'll put the bracket up tomorrow. You guys can we can decide if you want to play for money or not, or we can do it. But I've done it before, and I like to do it in a way that if your bracket gets destroyed on the first round, because normally that first weekend one of those brackets is going to be destroyed. I like to do it on a per point basis. Like the first round would be 1 point, second point, and the final 4, 5, and 6 points for that way. If you get your bracket destroyed and you get a team all the way to the championship, you still are gaining points, and the guy with the most points take all the money. I think that's the best way to do it. But if you think you're going to pick a perfect bracket or get through there without one of your brackets being destroyed, then you're wasting your time. I don't care if you watch it as much as I do. I still can't tell you what upsets are going to come. I might have an idea, but I can pick the upset and lose it. And then there goes my bracket right there. But if you guys want to do it, I'm all for it, man. Just send me a message in the chat, and if I get 5 or 6 people who want to do it, then we'll go ahead and put the tournament together. And like I said, I won't count the Tuesday play-in games. We can do it starting Thursday. So if I get enough people who's interested, then we can do that. There's a way to keep this chat going when I close this out, but I don't know how to do that. So if there's enough people who see this in a day or so, we could put the poll, we could put the bracket together. But I think Duke is going to win it all. So I get my 6-5, that's 11, 15, 18, 21 points out of Duke getting to that championship round. And if you pick the 2 teams that get there, you can win it with about 60, 65 points. And I run away from you guys. So again, if you're interested, just drop me a line in the comment section, and we can put it together. I'll come back on tomorrow, and we can go from there. But in the meantime, I'm about to hit these roads, man. Rideshare driver. What I like to do is turn this thing on and talk sports with the passengers. I've done that before. Got some pretty interesting comments from some of the passengers. Even had some good interviews out of some of them. Just on the spot, impromptu, let's talk sports. That's the kind of stuff I like. And you'd be surprised what some of your fellow fans of sport have to say about their particular team, especially this time of year. With the optimism about baseball, that starts on the 27th, I believe. The Yankees and the Dodgers are going to get it on. And should be pretty interesting. So just drop me a line, like I said, on that tournament, and we'll talk about that. But in the meantime, wherever you are in the world, appreciate you chiming in with me. Like and subscribe, that would be great. And I'll catch you guys on the other side. Hopefully this afternoon I turn my ride share on, and maybe I can catch a live baseball game again. And got some good sports action coming for you. And oh, by the way, I got an interview subject that's going to be very interesting. Athlete, done well in the community leader, all of that, and very outspoken. So I'm interested into putting that interview together within the next week. So until then, I'll fill you in on the details about that as it come up. But meantime, you guys have a great day in the world. I'm fixing to hit these streets, man. So have a great day, because I got to go to work. I'm out. Still no more poll responses. I think Duke's going to win it all. Florida's the hot pick right now, but Duke probably going to win.